So we've created our animation idle for the non-movement state of the player character. So now what we need to do is we need to set this as the default sprite for our player character. That way we can align it with our collision capsule and make sure it's all sized properly in our world. So we're going to open up the player character here and look at the viewport, and we see by default it's still using the animation Unreal Engine guy, I guess you could say. It's using the idle animation for that character, but we don't want that anymore. That's going to be actually too big for our game world. So we'll go to our anim idle we created, and we can see right away it's a lot smaller. So the collision capsule will need to be resized. So we'll play with this a little bit. We'll set the capsule radius to 22. And if we move to the front view, we can more closely align it with the base of the capsule component. It's still a little big. So let's see, let's shrink this a little bit more, the height. Let's knock the height down to, let's try 32. That sounds good. All right, so we'll move up the sprite so it matches the bottom of that capsule. That's looking good. So if we go back to perspective mode, we can see this is sized appropriately. So the sprite matches the collision component a little more closely now. Okay, so next we'll go to our event graph. And we're going to look at the update animation event here. This is called on every tick. And what we see here is it's set to check the velocity. If the velocity is true or false, meaning if its length is greater than 0, that means it's moving. If it's less than 0, it's false, so it's idle. So we're going to make this more complicated later, but for now, we're just going to replace the false animation, where it says idle animation, with the anim idle that we just made, so that in the game world it shows our anim idle as soon as we hit play. And when it's true, we'll eventually replace that with movement animation. So we'll hit play here. We can see, sure enough, there's our character, but he's kind of far off in the distance. So we're going to have to mess around a little bit with, let's try the project settings first, just to make sure we're still on 1280 by 720 window. Okay, so that's not the issue. So what's the issue? Well, the issue is actually the camera settings. Now to get our sprite character appearing about the right size that we want in the 1280 by 720 game window, we're going to use the actual distance between the camera to the sprite character to determine that size. So to make that happen, we need to use a little bit of depth. And we get that by setting the projection mode to perspective. This will also give us depth later on when we start building out our playable space. So if we look at this now, we can see our playable character is a pretty good size in the 1280 by 720 game window. And the idle animation is playing when we're not actually moving, and that's what we want right now.